Hello, friends. Hi, on the first Monday in March of 2024. I'm Holly Elissa Bruno, and I'm really grateful to be with you. This program is called Trauma Survivors Finding Our Way Home. And we've been doing this now for 4 years. It was originally called the name of the book, which is Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You, Translating Trauma's Harsh Legacy into Healing. That was the original title. And when I began to bring other people on with me to share their stories, their hope, their strengths, their philosophies, and their everyday practices of what works for them, I changed it to Trauma Survivors Finding Our Way Home, which comes from Ram Dass. You may know that. He said, we're all just helping each other find our way home. And so I'm really glad to be with you. We have about an hour together, and we talk about how to live on this earth, live on the face of this earth fully, have a complete and full life, a rich life. Rich is not necessarily meaning wealth, although if that's what you need, that's it. But riches meaning fulfillment. Riches meaning challenges that we can face and get help with and overcome and celebrations and watching of the changing of the seasons and noticing beauty and loving the connections with each other and watching people grow, including ourselves. So that's the overriding sense of this program. The question is, how do we help each other find our way home? And today I'd like to talk with you about two things. One is some techniques that are available to trauma survivors that have actually been proven to make a difference. And I came upon one called tapping. Wave at me if you know tapping, or it's also called EFT. EFT means Emotional Freedom Technique. I hope I got that right. I think it is Emotional Freedom Technique, EFT. And here's what it is. It is a process of tapping places that are in our body that are acupressure centers. And so here's one here, the bone above the eyebrow, closer to the center of the face. And here's another one, the bone at the edge of our eye. And you can do both sides if you want. And another one, the bone, I have to feel for it, the bone directly underneath the eye. And then another acupressure point, the bone just beneath the nose. And then you're going for the bone, go for the bone. And then where the crease is in your neck, and your chin, there's another space. And then the collarbones. So feel them out, touch them, touch those collarbones. And then lastly, here, it's right beneath your armpit. Go for the bone there. Don't go down too far, up too far. It's beneath the armpit and above, pretty much above the ribs. Those are the acupressure points. And what's important about that? Well, emotional freedom technique in theory and in practice allows us to check in, to tap in to places in our body that will activate or quiet down, perhaps the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of our brain that we've had for the longest time. And its sole purpose is to keep us safe. Now, who wants to mess with the amygdala? It's keeping us safe. What are you talking about, Holly Elissa? Well, guess what? Sometimes it goes overboard and it keeps us too safe. And we've talked about that a lot in this program, that the amygdala can take out the function of the prefrontal cortex. And that is the executive function, which allows us, it's a part of the brain that allows us to get perspective. To get perspective, to climb up the mountaintop and look around and see what's all around here and see who's with us and who isn't. To get perspective so as to say, I am not the child that I was as a victim. I am an adult who loves that child and will help that child get free. Emotional freedom technique. So the overarching point is there are systems and practices we can do to, I'm looking around to be sure I have water, and I do, but I'm going to have a sip. There are practices and theories we can use. And one of them, if you want to look it up, just look up EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And you'll find the theory behind it, and you'll find the research behind it. The American Psychological Association is now pretty clearly backing it as a process that helps trauma survivors. How about that? And how does it help us? It helps us connect with the meridians, the energy pods, the energy, how can I say, vectors perhaps, in our bodies, where by touching them, we can free up other energies. And I'm not a scientist, my friend. So if you want the science behind this, go to EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. However, I have been practicing this for, 25 years, and it has helped me. And I just reclaimed it. Why? Because there currently is it's a tapping summit online now. And a couple of days ago, I had a bad headache. I don't usually get bad headaches, but I get them if my blood sugar gets messed up or I'm not taking care of myself. And in this case, I had not had breakfast yet, like I haven't today. What's that about? That's another story I can talk with you about because I've always said, have a good breakfast. But what I'm doing today is what I did that day when I had a headache. And I said, okay, I can go eat something, I can drink water, or I can watch this program. And the program was with a woman from Canada. Her name was Ariel, Dr. Ariel, somebody. And she was an expert on yoga and trauma, yoga and tapping. And so she did a very simple exercise, which was to walk us through how to tap our way into freedom. And by the way, the very last place to tap is the crown of our heads, where all of those chakras come together. Now, you don't have to believe in chakras. You don't have to believe in energy systems. You don't have to believe in any of this stuff. It's an invitation more than a command. It's something I've found works for me. So look up tapping, look up EFT. And here's the point. If I can connect with those parts of my body, my energy flow, the acupressure points that can tap into where the fear is, where the amygdala is taking over, then I can, through word and touch and word, help myself back to recovery. And the amazing thing about the research, which I found out yesterday, is that the research is showing that there can be permanent change. Imagine that. So I'm thinking, oh my God, if you've been with me for a while, you know, I went to Kerala. I went to Southern India. I went on my own. I went somewhat organized, but not super organized. And at the last minute, I decided to take 2 suitcases, regular suitcases, instead of one, and check one in, and it worked perfectly. So I was at this place where I didn't know anybody, and I came off the plane smiling. This is after 20 something hours of flying. And I have had all kinds of phobias as a result of my heredity and also the panic disorder that I have. That's also hereditary. I've had phobias, I've had fears, and there are things that I just wouldn't touch. For example, I have and have had a fear of heights, And I beat myself up about that for so long, feeling I must be going crazy as my mother was going crazy. And by the way, my friends, let me hold this up for you. I got feedback, and it was very helpful from people in one person in another country that said, sometimes your program can be triggering. And I took that to heart. First off, I started taking it personally and saying, oh no. And then I said, wait a minute, Holly Elissa, what have I learned in recovery? I've learned to take feedback, not as criticism, but to see if there's truth in it. And what I want to do now, I've been doing it, but very sort of, what can I say? Not systematically. But what I want to do as we have our time together is to let you know where you can go if in the moment something troubles you. If something I mentioned, like my mother having mental illness, and God knows so many of our mothers had mental illness. If that is something that triggers something in you, I want to tell you some of the things you can use and some of the places you can go. And here is the first one, and I hope it's readable. I hope it is. It is in New York City. So it's the East Coast, United States. And the number is 800-643-7462. That's 800-643-7462. I hope that that's coming across to you. I'll say it again. 800-643-7462. And if you call that organization, it is a 24/7 warm line. Warm lines are not hotlines. Hotlines are for people that are in pretty serious crisis. Warm lines are for people like me, like you, perhaps, that have times when we get depressed, times when we get discouraged, times when we get anxious, times when connecting with another person who will listen and not judge us and hear our secret, or hear our sadness, or hear our sorrow, or hear our pain. Just having someone like that to talk to is so healing. And my hope is that you have found or are finding trauma therapists that can be helpful to you. I have one with whom I meet every week. 10 years ago, I had one with whom I met twice a week. Look for the person who's experienced in trauma recovery. Ask around, go online, ask people you know that are also fellow travelers, and find out what your possibilities might be. And then what I recommend, and I outline this in the book, Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You, vet those people, interview them. You're the client, you are the customer. I'm the customer. I have the right to discover who I'm going to work with. In the past, I thought, oh man, I'm just washing up on a shore, and if somebody comes to rescue me and hold me in your arms, rescue me. That's what it felt like when I felt like a victim, that someone was going to rescue me. Today, I know that I can find people who can be of wondrous service to me as a trauma survivor. And I have been so fortunate to find two excellent people. How did I find my first person? I went to a 12-step meeting. At this point, it was before I was going to the 12-step meeting for survivors of trauma. And there was a traditional 12-step meeting, a lot of traditional steps, and I didn't quite fit in. I mean, I fit into the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the fact that I'm powerless over certain things. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I live that serenity prayer. I learned painstakingly, step at a time, to let go of the fact that I could not affect my father. I couldn't make him happy. He was a narcissist. He was totally into himself. I learned I could not, even though I was told as a child that I was responsible for my mother's happiness. I learned I could not be. I could love her. I could support her. I could listen to her. I could sing with her and dance with her, but I could not heal her. That's a choice each one of us has to make. And so one of the things that you can do now, if you don't have a trauma counselor, or even if you do, and you just need to talk to a peer, somebody who's been there, call 800-643-7462. It's called the Empowerment program, the Empowerment Center, and they are open to your call. If this doesn't work for you, go online and look up Warm Lines for Trauma, state by state listing. Look for your state. If your state has one, fabulous. If it doesn't, equally fabulous. Look for the trauma lines in other states that say everybody's welcome. Now, the person who contacted me, and I thank her for it, from another country, who said that my program could trigger people, this program could trigger people. I took that to heart, and I take that very seriously, because here's the challenge. The truth sets us free, and we have to be ready for the truth. And so if I'm ready for certain kinds of truths, after 36 years of working on this, and 9.5 years, over 9.5 years, working on in the 12-step organization that helps people with trauma, with fellow travelers, I might be ready for things because over the years I have chosen to step up, to experiment, safely experiment with different practices. And I have done a number of them, and I have consistently done a number of them. So when this person said my program could be, this program, my friends, the one you're listening to, could be traumatizing, could be triggering, I said, Holly Elissa, what can we do? What can we do? And so throughout this program, I'm going to share with you things, processes that have helped me. That number that you can call, just look up Warm Lines, not hotlines, Warm Lines for Trauma in the United States. I've asked people from other countries to let me know if you have such things in other countries. But until we find that out and can report that, please know that it appears you can call these numbers in the United States and get help. And in the meantime, start asking people, go online for who is a trustworthy trauma therapist, someone who has studied the brain, someone who has studied the particular characteristics of trauma survivors. And you'll find them again in my book. There are 14 traits that we have as trauma survivors. One is we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves. Another is that we tend to forge relationships with people that we pity, don't love. There are so many of them, and many of them are true for me. And so what I recommend is finding someone to work with. If you don't have someone today, you will. And meanwhile, the 800 number is possible. Meanwhile, there are other sources of help. And I want to focus on one of them today, and that is the tapping process, the emotional freedom technique. I studied this with just a regular counselor. She wasn't was more like a relationship counselor. She was fine. End of last century, I studied with her, worked with her. She was my counselor, my therapist. And after a while, she said to me, your work is done here. You've done everything you can. And she was telling me the truth. She had shared with me all she could, and I had worked with her all I could. And it was time for me to move on. And I did. And I outline a number of places in the book where I got help. And one of them is something that I learned from this counselor. Her name, I don't need to share her name. She was in Boston area, and she said to me, look, try this tapping. It works. If you work it, you're worth it. And so it is simply, in my own scientific way of understanding, a way of connecting physically with the acupressure points in our body where energy flows through, and those places get blocked. This is why in acupuncture, which I also receive, when I receive acupuncture and there's a needle, that sounds scary, 800-643-7462. I don't like needles either, but I have found a person, again, I vetted who's the person who's going to be really sensitive and caring trauma survivors, and I found one, and she uses only tiny needles. They're not scary. They're not scary to look at. But what's going on with the needle or just with acupressure is this. I'm touching a junction in the body where all kinds of neurons come together, where all kinds of energies connect. And as I touch those and I say healing words, each time I do that, I start to feel better. And so, as I said, I do this practice when I need it, which isn't a regular practice, but it's there, and it's called tapping or emotional freedom technique. And of late, I decided to, again, go back to studying it to see if it might help. And as I was listening to this woman, Dr. Ariel, somebody in Canada whose area of expertise is yoga and trauma recovery, she uses tapping as well. And she did this a very simple process. And anyone who is listening through Zoom could access this. And the woman who was interviewing her was also doing it. So it looked like to me like the three of us were doing it. And so what you can do, and what I did, is I can start out as generally as I want to or as specifically as I want to. I went with her. She started generally. And here are the tapping points. The one up here above, I'm going right here, touching the bone, above the eyebrow, toward the center, because here is the third eye. And I'm relaxing the third eye by helping it just close itself. Just close itself. Open as it needs to the third eye. You see many depictions of the third eye. One of the trauma recovery things I did was to go to a place called the Meadows. It's a recovery place in Arizona. And at the time I went there, it wasn't just for people who had substance addiction. It was for people that had processes like work addiction, codependency, which is what I was there for. Codependency is the need to look out for other people first and not take care of myself. I was exquisite at that. I learned that from birth. And so I was able to spend 6 weeks at the Meadows. And there were many techniques that they used there that I have learned, and many of them are still being used. There were people there like Dr. John Bradshaw, like I think Kevin Carnes, perhaps the person who's an expert and written a lot on sex and love addiction, Cairns, I believe. And then there was Dr. Claudia Black, who's the person I quote a lot because she says the 3 rules that we learn as traumatized children are: don't you dare talk with anybody, don't you tell anybody, don't you talk about this trauma that's going on, don't trust anybody outside the family. And in my case, don't trust anybody because it was people in the family, which is the usual case with trauma. People in the family were the traumatizers. So don't talk with them because you're going to get hurt if you do, because you're telling something they don't want to hear. Perhaps it's re-traumatizing them and they handle it with rage and anger. They don't handle it with maturity, like saying, thank you very much. This is what I said to the person that gave me feedback. Thank you very much. Thank you. I shall look at that. And here's a list of what I'm doing already. But I'm going to look at what else I can do to make sure that people feel safe, that you feel safe when you're with me. And so this emotional freedom technique is one of those processes. And the places where the energies or the neurons are important to touch are above the eyebrow. You can do it on both eyes or just one. I often just do the right-hand side because I'm right-handed. And then to the right of the eye where you feel the bone. So above the eyebrow, to the right of the eye. You can try this if you want to, don't have to. Just practice touching there. And sometimes it's a relief just to touch there because there's pressure built up in there. And then the next thing to do is touch just beneath the eye. Just beneath the eye where there's bone. Yeah. And how many times do you have to touch? 6 as a minimum, I was taught. But you can touch as much as you need to. If there's soreness there, keep touching. Or maybe you feel good. It's fine there. Move on. And then the other one is just beneath the bone, above the mouth. Excuse me, just beneath the nose, above the mouth. So tap there. And the third one is where the chin and the mouth are coming together right here for me. And so tap there as well. It's not the third one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 is the collarbone. 2 hands or 1 hand. 4, 5, 6. And the next to the last one is underneath your armpit, not your armpit, but underneath it. Again, tap the bone. Tap, tap, tap. And then at last, go to the crown of your head and tap or pat. Maybe patting feels more true to you. So those are the places to touch. Those are the acupressure points where energies are transmitted, messages are transmitted. And as we're touching those, perhaps just touching those frees you up. Now, next comes, what do we get to say as we're touching these points? So let's just talk about the words. There are many ways to do this. I've chosen 2 approaches so that you can choose if you want to. You're totally at choice here. You don't have to do this at all. You just watch me doing it and look it up to see if it's something that might help you, this emotional freedom technique. I'm just thrilled that I found out that it works for trauma survivors. And not only does it work to help us feel more ourselves in the moment, and isn't that the goal? To feel ourselves rather than feeling like I'm dissociating from my body, to feel like I'm at home in my body rather than running away, to feel that I'm okay inside and not going crazy inside because a panic attack is coming. If this will ground me, and it does, then I do it, and it helps, and I will do it again because it will help again and again. So there are 2 approaches. One is a macro approach, big picture approach, and the other is the micro approach. And what I often do is start with the micro approach. So as I said, when I was doing the tapping with this woman from Canada, Ariel, she was talking in general terms, but I had a headache. And so what I was doing was saying, and here's what I've learned. There are other ways to say this now. I have unconditional love. Whether I believe this or not, I say it. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, including this nasty headache in the back of my head, the base of my neck. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, including, I used to say despite, but now I say including the part of my brain, the part of my head, my neck that really aches right now. I have a headache right now. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself. I'm moving to the next place. And I've got this awful headache. Now I just talked about it. I've got this awful headache. And when I used to get migraines, I don't get them anymore because they were hormone related for me. But on occasion I get one. And so, like any other trauma, migraines are trauma. If you ever had one, like any other trauma, feeling this pain of this headache coming on is like scary, frightening to me. And so I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, including the fact that I have a headache coming on that reminds me of those awful days of having migraines. By the way, my mother, my grandmother, my aunt all got migraines. So what was that? What was that? I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself. Not only that, I really am proud of myself for the changes that I have made and the choices I've made to change. Including right now, I've got this one part of my body that's hurting and I don't want it to flare up. And that's the very back of my neck. I'm just going to touch it right now. The very back of my neck where my spine comes into my brain, my skull. Yeah, that's where it hurts. And I love myself, including this hurt. I want to embrace this hurt and ask for help healing it. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, including this budding headache, which frightens me. I'm scared. The other thing here is I'm afraid of headaches, that they can really take me down. If you've had migraines, you know they can make it impossible to be in a room with light. Sitting up can make me sick to my stomach. Oh, can't eat. Can be really scary. And so the memory of that coming back to me now is scary. However, guess what? Here we go beneath the lips and above the chin. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself. In fact, I love myself. Even if I don't believe that 100% all the time, I love the courage that I've had, that I have and have had, the determination that I've had, the integrity that I've had to face this stuff, because it was ruling my life. My trauma response was ruining my life. And now I have love and acceptance of myself. And again, I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, including the fact that I have a budding headache, or you can say something else specific, like including the fact that my knees are so achy. I took a long walk outside yesterday and it was beautiful, but that made my knees and hips achy, and that's no fun. That's no fun either, the arthritis. So I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, and I accept that I have arthritis and I need help with it. And now let's go here. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself. Tap, 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 tap 6 times, including the fact that my 78-year-old body has aches and pains. I love my body. I accept my body. And I want to be kind to my body. And so I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, including the fact that I have this budding headache and this arthritis that causes aches and pains in my body. And then I stop and I breathe. Sometimes, like right now, I can feel the pressure is too strong a word, but I can feel almost a glow, a warm memory physically of where I tapped. I can feel that. Maybe it is the nerve cells there being freed. Maybe it is the nerve cells there connecting. Whatever it is, I know, and I knew on the day that I did this one time, this tapping process, all those points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Are there 8 chakras? I don't know. You can tell me. Anyway, touching those points and saying those words of affirmation, and you can say what you need to, as long as you're being loving to yourself, as long as I'm being loving to myself, we can say what we need to say. And so this woman was starting out by saying something very general, like, she didn't say I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself. She said something like, whoops here. I care deeply about myself, even though I feel frazzled today. I'm 6. I care deeply about myself, even though I feel really disorganized today. I care deeply. I love myself, including the fact that I am not the most organized person on earth, that I can be really disorganized, that I am so go with the flow, that if an idea comes along that's exciting, I'll stop and I'll consider the idea. I have love for myself. I love myself. And I accept that I am not the queen of organization, but what I am, that was a negative about myself. What I am is a person that can be present and notice things going on and be stunned by a bird on a branch of a tree. I love that about myself. I love that I can do this program with you totally unrehearsed. I trust myself now And I want to love that little person within me. The first time she learned to speak in public was so terrified. She was breaking the don't talk rule. She was saying things out loud in front of people. That's where you could be shamed. I could be, use the word I, not you. I could be shamed saying anything out loud in front of people. So I truly practiced over and over again my presentations so that I almost had them memorized. And so now I am so grateful for the little girl that did that legwork. And I'm thankful and grateful to the adult who now walks into a room, 3,000 people, 50 people, 20 people, 6 people, 150 people, 4,000 people, a huge amphitheater with 10,000 seats. I've spoken in all these places, and I do it now with trust in myself and with faith in myself and with confidence that if I get scared, in the moment I can tell people, my friends, I have, as I told you up front, I do have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This doesn't put anybody in danger, especially me, because I know ways when I'm feeling scared to take care of myself. And one of them is to tap, 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 tap. And then another way is to take a deep breath and allow that calm to go throughout my body. And another way is to have a glass of water. I always have that available because I've usually got lipstick on when I'm doing a keynote. I make sure I have a straw so I don't mess up with my lipstick, right? Because that's really important. I have water. I also have ways of not just tapping, but if my knees are aching, which they tend to do, I can rub them. I can rub them. If I'm feeling hypervigilance, as you know, is the constant scanning of the environment to see if I'm safe. And that's what I learned to do. Trauma survivors learn that we're not safe, can't trust. And so we have to scan the environment. I joke about this, but it's true, and see if it's true for you. When you go into a restaurant or into a meeting, where do you sit? Where do you sit? And if the speaker says, come on right down in front, is that comfortable for you? If the waiter, the maitre d', is about to seat us in a restaurant and he's giving me a seat right in the middle of things, I often turn to him or her and say, I prefer to sit in a quieter space in the back so we can have a conversation. Can you put me in a booth, or do you have a place that's more toward the wall? And I've discovered I'm saying that because from there, if the fear returns to me, I can have a sip of water. I can breathe in and out. I can very subtly tap, tap. I can talk directly to the fear and say, hello, old friend. I know you so well. I know you so well, and you're a precursor to my throat getting tight, which I don't want it to because I want to enjoy this dinner. You're a precursor to my feeling anxious, panic attack coming. I don't want that to happen either. And so I greet you and welcome you, and I'm not going to let you take over. I'm not going to let you take over. And what am I going to do instead? I'm going to enjoy my time with my friend here, or my partner here, or whoever I'm with. And hopefully, and usually I am with people that I can say something really honest to, like, you know, I love you. And there are times when, because I have this complex post-traumatic stress disorder, without warning, something could trigger me. Maybe it's a smell that takes me back to a place where I wasn't safe. Maybe it's a sound in the kitchen, like something, plate breaking. Boy, how many of you can get triggered by that? Or maybe it's something I'm not conscious of, but it came to me. Maybe it's the way a man on the other side of the room is looking at me. And I'm going to look right back at it. Let him know. No, thank you. There are all kinds of things that can trigger is one word, and glimmer is another word. Glimmer is a word that comes out of the polyvagal system, which we've talked about a bit on this program. The polyvagal nerve, which has a large coverage of our body, and that's a whole other way to physically and mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually heal from bodily trauma, to prevent it from overtaking us, to befriend it and say, hello, old friend, I know you. I know you really well. I know you really well. And for now, I'm going to say, thanks for doing what you did. You served a purpose, but I don't need you to do that now. And I'm going to give you a break. So fear, the hypervigilance, I don't want to be hypervigilant in this very safe restaurant. If I need to be, I'll just look up and do a quick scan, but I don't need to be watching all the time to see if danger is coming my way. No, I'm with my friend. Usually with my friends, they know me, and I can say to them, look, guys, I just want to say I'm having a moment where the reminder of a panic attack is coming to me. It's threatening me, and I don't want to go there. So what I'd like to do, if you guys are okay with it, just talk with you briefly so that we can connect. Let's share something that connects us. Like, and I need to start out if you're okay with that, or you can start if you need to. Let's just share something that we learned this week. It might have been a difficult learning. Or for you, it might have been an easy learning. But what's something you learned this week that helped you change, helped you grow? And then I might share something like, well, my gosh, I got feedback that my podcast might be triggering for some people. And so I learned I learned to feel the grief, like, oh my God, I'm being misunderstood. Oh my God, I'm causing harm, all the self-blame stuff, which I learned how to do so well as a child. I said hello to that. And I said, thanks, but I don't need you right now. What I need more is my mature response to say to the person that gave me the feedback, thank you very much. Thank you so much for helping me see what I need to look at. And thank you for the reminder that this program needs to be safe for everybody. And everyone has her own or his own triggers. And so if someone needs to call the 800 number, here it is again, 800-643-7462, 800-643-7462 will get you in touch with the Power Empowerment Center. And that's a warm line. You can talk with them and say, I'm just having a really hard day and I need someone to listen to me. Can you do that? You know how sometimes you get on trains or planes, or you're sitting at a big conference and you can start talking to the person next to you and share in more personal ways than you usually do, or sometimes not. But sometimes that happens because there's a phenomenon of being able to share with a stranger that we'll probably never see again what's really going on. What's really going on? So I'll give you an example. I was at a conference with friends that I had known that had known me. It was an international conference, and the question that was put to us in this large workshop was, what was your first job? I knew immediately what my first job was, and no one was ready to start. So I can tell you what my first job was. It may be disturbing. And so I want to ask you if it's okay if I can tell you as a child what my job was. And they said, yeah, go ahead. And I said, my first job was to keep my mother happy, to take care of my mother. She was mentally ill and didn't want to see therapists, didn't want to be known as mentally ill. Couldn't embrace that herself. Was ashamed. Was split off from herself. And here I was a little kid, and I was a loving little kid. And so my father made it clear to me, my job was that I was to keep her from getting sick. Now, my trauma therapist, decades later, said, that was a horrible thing to say to a child. That was not fair. No child can do that. And you know what I said? And again, If it starts to feel uncomfortable to you, take a breath, take a breath, tap on those points where the nerve cells are communicating. Say, I love myself, but I'm afraid to hear what this woman's going to say. And so take care of me, please. Take care of me, please. And let me take care of myself. And so what I said to them, I said that to them. I didn't go into graphic detail about what it was like being with my mother when she slipped into her terrifying places. I didn't go into what it was like that my father didn't even see me to be able to protect me. I didn't do that. However, what happened was one of the people who knew me reached across the table and took my hand and said, "I'm so sorry you had to endure that." And I said, "Thank you very much." It was very sad. It was very sad. And another person said, "Well, wow, I don't really know what to say. I was thinking my first job was delivering papers." And I said, "Great. I want to hear about your first job delivering papers, because what we're doing here is I think they're going to ask us a follow-up question." And guess what the follow-up question was as other people started sharing? The follow-up question was something like, "And how does having done that work as a child inform your work today?" Easy for me to answer. The guy who did the paper route, remember that back in the day when people used to deliver papers? Maybe they still do. It was an okay job for kids to have, mostly males, but then girls can have too. Rode your bike, got up real early, flung the newspaper, made sure it landed in the right place on the person's porch. I fired a guy one time for delivering the New York Times and just throw it at my front door, and it would get in the mud puddle, or it would get in, if it were snow, in the snow. I called 3 times and they didn't change anything. I found out later from the New York Times, if I'd only called a 4th time, they would have taken it seriously. That was their complaint system. So I canceled the New York Times. Now I only get the Sunday New York Times if I feel like doing that. So let's go, my friends, to some of the things we can do for ourselves every day. Emotional freedom technique. Look it up. You'll probably be able to find a counselor who does it. You may be even able to find support groups of people that do emotional freedom technique. And I'm only going to do that one this week because there are so many others. I'll just give you an example. Some of you may have heard of EMDR. EMDR is a process that I'm not going to go into, except to tell you that it depends upon eye movement. And the theory is that the eye movement connects us with parts of our brain that we're not usually connected to, and makes it safer for us to return to difficult trauma memories. And I know men who swear by this. I did it. I did it because I felt if this will help, I will do it. It wasn't the answer for me, but it was a worthy thing to try. And another is no bad parts. There is an author, Richard Schwartz. He speaks a lot, does a lot of podcasts, does a lot of trainings online. I've heard him speak online and read his book, No Bad Parts, I think is what the book is called. And he literally encourages us to talk with those parts of us inside that are keeping us stuck. And I watched him work with a therapist who was asking Schwartz to go through his process. And masterfully, Schwartz, one step at a time, said to the therapist in front of all these people, so what's the one thing you really don't want me to raise or talk about during our time together? And the therapist said, oh yeah, there's some things about my childhood I don't want to discuss at all. And Schwartz didn't take him back to talk about those things in his childhood. He was saying, I'm not ready for that. That's to be respected. That is to be respected. There are many times in my work that I just say, Holly Elissa, you're too tired, honey. You're too tired. I need to take a break. And the break can be a 5-minute. Let me just get up and walk around here. I gotta walk around. Or let me just go ask somebody for a hug. Or let me just go start singing. I mean, I'll begin a keynote and I'll start singing, lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I say, come on, join me if you can, because you know my voice is just it's anything but my voice. See, all you have to have is your voice, no problem. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long before I'll need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, sister, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. You just might have I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. I invite people, if they want to stand up and sway. And I hope I'm doing a presentation. I think I am. One in Florida. We'll see if the juried folk accept me for New Orleans. But it's about, I'm working with a friend who writes about the brain and music with little children. And we're working on trauma and music with adults and little children. And one of the things we're going to talk about is how the phlegmatic, what is that called? I'm talking like centuries old term here, phlegmatic system, lymphatic system. When we sway, when we clap, we sway and we clap, we are bringing alive the lymphatic system, which gets energies flowing too, just like acupressure points gets energy flowing. And so the two things I'm talking about here, one is break into song, break into laughter. Call somebody that makes you crack up. Or, you know what? I had a dentist one time doing root canals, and I had a choice of who I wanted to watch. And I always went with Robin Williams. Oh, my goodness. Or Lucille Ball, Chocolate Factory, Stomping Grapes. You know what I mean? It would always make me laugh. Winters, who was that guy that Robin Williams really loved? He was teetered between mental health and being a terrific comedian. Jonathan Winters. He would talk about his traumas and his troubles and always make us laugh. Not to say those traumas didn't exist, but to say the quickest way to get from the amygdala takeover, the panic, the flatlining of the part of my brain that can help me, the quickest way to get out of that freeze, fight, flight, fawn, float stage is to move from the amygdala, which is in control, to the executive function. And there are quick ways to do that. One is to sing, one is to dance, one is to go outside for 10 minutes, get in the rhythms of nature. Another is to laugh. Another is to connect through a hug. All of these things are healing. And I have learned that any of these will help me. And so, my friends, as we come to a close, we only have about 5 minutes left. I invite you to ask yourself, and only ask yourself if this feels safe to you. Do you have processes, techniques, steps that you take, things that you do to help you feel better? And right now I'm hearing somebody say, yeah, honey, I get me a glass of Prosecco. Well, I have done that. I've done that too. There are times after a full day's work, right? Isn't that it? When I'm really stripped, my energies are really like, and I need to go to dinner with a client, and all I want to do is go to bed. So I will level with the client. Let's have dinner early so I can be present. Because when it gets to be about 9 o'clock, I really want to I want us to have time together. As I say that, I'm remembering a time where was I? Iowa. I'd given a keynote on other workshops, and I was exhausted. And they had scheduled our dinner until like 7 o'clock. And I had to go back to my hotel so I could take a nap. I was exhausted. And through one mishap after another, I got taken and left at the wrong hotel. So by the time I got finally to my real hotel, I had half an hour at best to nap and get back to the dinner. So I called him up. I said, I'm going to be late. And then I fell asleep. And it was sacred, blessed sleep. Boy, did I need that sleep. And then I had a shame attack, and I called them and I said, I'm coming over now. Please go ahead and eat. They did. I got there and we had the conversation. And I said to them, guys, my 77-year-old body tells me when I need to sleep, and I really needed to sleep. So thank you for going ahead and eating, and thank you for staying. I love talking with you. So we had a heart-to-heart conversation. It was really helpful. It was really good. What I'm trying to say is our bodies tell us what we need. And when I listen, I might have to take a step that's not comfortable for other people. Like I might have to say to someone, I would love, oh yeah, I had a really bad cough. I had flown all across the United States to community college in California to give the keynote. And I was going to spend the afternoon with this wonderful woman and her beautiful daughter. And I felt so sick, I could barely speak without losing my voice or coughing. And I said to her, I am so, so sorry. But all I have the energy to do is get some breakfast and then sleep. And I'm not going to be able to do the afternoon with you, which I was looking forward to so much. They had even cleared out a space in their condo where I could nap if I needed to. But I said, I think I've got some kind of cold or virus thing here because I'm coughing and it's hard to stop and I'm without energy. I said those things and I felt bad about it. Yeah, because I had promised. So from here on out, I'm going to say, I'd love to do that with you. As long as I've got the energy at the time, let's do it. Let's do it. And so, my friends, my question to you is, what happened at that dinner when I finally got there? Asked me what I wanted to drink, and I said, I'll have me a mojito. I'll have me a mojito. Yeah, let's just do it. Because I was really tired and I need to let go of all the weariness. And I know that alcohol is a brief respite from that, right? So I'm confessing to Almighty God and you, my brothers and sisters, and I don't mean to be religiously disrespectful. That's the way I learned to say it. That I do that from time to time. I will have a drink. Not very much anymore, but I do. And guess what? I've lost 15 pounds since I got back from the wonders of Kerala in southern India. And I said to myself, I'm having trouble walking up some of these steps. It's not my heart. I had heart surgery. My heart is good. It's the fact that I've got too much weight on my hips and my knees, my thighs, my hips, my knees, over the lips, onto the hips is what happens if I overeat. And honey, in India, oh, the food is beyond delicious. It's often beyond healthy. And it does have cream sauces, and it does have lots of yogurts, and it does have sweets. A lot of things are sweetened. And yeah, I came back, and on the first day I got back, I said, I'm resting. And then I'm going to look at something that might help me not eat sweet things when carbos. And so I've been doing that. I lost 15 pounds. How yippee skippy is that? I have unconditional love and pride in myself for taking care of myself in that way. I'm really happy with myself that I have been conscientiously able to drop 15 pounds. And yeah, I'd like to drop about 30 more. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. This is the old-fashioned way that I learned. It's to use your fingers too. When I noticed watching this week is that the fingers aren't necessary, but the top of the head, the crown chakra, always is. So listen, you can read up on no bad parts, which means there are no bad parts to myself. And what happened with that therapist who volunteered to work with Rick Schwartz? The therapist said, yeah, there's some things in my childhood I don't want to even think about. So Schwartz wisely worked with something that I have and that you might have. You have, and I call it a sentinel. It's like a guardian. It's a part of me that takes care of that little girl inside of me and says she doesn't want to talk about that. She's too raw. She does not want to talk at all about some of the abuse that she suffered. She wants to keep that to herself. And so what did Schwartz do instead of like doing the inappropriate and going too far? He said, can you tell me about that part of you that was protecting your memories, keeping them safe, keeping them kept inside of you? And so the therapist said, yeah, I'll talk, you can talk to that part of me. I can talk with that part of me. And so Schwartz very skillfully started saying, and so that part of you that's keeping all the secrets intact and protecting that little kid that's got all those secrets, do you ever get tired? And the therapist then speaking for that part, the sentinel, the guardian said, are you kidding? I'm tired of this stuff. I've been doing it my whole life. I don't have any life except to be the guardian and help this part of myself stay never spoken about. Okay. So how long have you done this? Well, as long as I remember, speaking to the sentinel, well, as I remember. There are secrets that I had to keep. And if the little girl, a little boy started needing to cry about them or talk about them, I said, let's go someplace else, honey. Let's get away from these people, because if they see you crying, it's going to be trouble. And Schwartz again talked with the sentinel and said, wow, that took a lot. Did that take a lot out of you? What did it feel like? Well, I'm starting to hate it, said the sentinel. I'm starting to hate it. I'm getting old. I haven't had any other life. I think it might be possible to play. I've heard of that. I make it possible for the little kid over there to play, except sometimes she says to me, I want to come out and play. I don't want to have to stay in my secret place all the time, my secret garden. I need to play with other people. Anyway, I watched Schwartz do that. And if you read No Bad Parts, and if you look for internal IFS, here's another acronym, IFS, internal family systems. If you look that up and look up counselors who use that, you will find them and then vet them and see who fits you best. Internal family systems people talk about connecting with those parts of ourselves that we keep hidden because they protect a vulnerable part of ourselves. And after a while, what I've learned myself is I've used this IFS, this internal family system technique, with help. I talk with my therapist about it sometimes, and sometimes I do it in groups, and sometimes I do it on my own because I feel pretty safe with it. And if something comes up that doesn't feel safe, I make a note to talk with my counselor. However, I find it really helpful to talk with a sentinel because I have so many protectors that keep that little vulnerable little girl safe. The protector is her defender. He doesn't want to see her hurt again. He doesn't want to see her exposed to trauma again. So he'll keep her safe. But in the process of keeping her safe, he also keeps her from growing. And so now I work with a sentinel about how can I safely give you a break. And I myself, soulfully, as the adult here, can talk with that little girl and say, is there something that you feel safe that you can tell me? And the first thing I ever heard, 1-800-643-7462, if anything I say is triggering to you. I'm opposing triggering with glimmering, because glimmering is a term that says, where are those lights Where are the lights inside of us and outside of us? Through dance, through singing, through hugging, through telling the truth, through having connection with dear friends, through walking outside. How can I call upon one of those glimmers so that I don't automatically go down into fear or shame? How can I do that? And so when I did this conversation with my probably 4-year-old little girl, she came up to me, and this picture on the front of my book is the picture that I had of her, what she looked like when she came up to me and told me the truth. And you'll notice that the dress is becoming unraveled because God bless my mother at the time, she was taking me to have my picture taken. My sisters had already had their pictures taken, so she had to make sure I had a picture taken for the relatives. I don't know who, but the dress was falling apart. The lace on the sleeves was coming out and also around the bottom. She didn't notice. So when I was talking with this little girl, and I have a picture of her in my office, when I was talking with her, I said, are there memories that you can share with me? Because I feel there's so much that I'm holding down. And the little girl was very wise. She came up to me and she whispered in my ear, we can't be happy, and you can't be happy. I said, thank you. And then I said, it's okay. Thank you. You can go back and just do whatever you want to do now, sweetie. If you want to go out and play. My friend Marina, who's wonderful, you love Marina. She's really good with kids. She's ready to take you out if you want to go outside. I'm just going to sit here and reflect on what you told me. And looking back on that, that was a great gift because that was my family's message to me. Never articulated out loud, but that was the message. And so, my friends, we come to a close this Monday. The 4th, is it the 4th or the 5th? It's the 4th of March. And it's our going into our 4th year, I think on March 20th of this program. And my heartfelt wish is to co-create with you a space which is safe, which is not triggering, and at the same time where the truth can be told about how trauma survivors can help each other out. And I think next week we'll have Denise R. back on. She's very busy making all kinds of changes in her life. Denise, as she told you, is the person who gifted early childhood educator, can connect with every child. She was the one to whom other people in the program said the impossible children, and they were never impossible to her. They never are. So Denise is changing her career and working with children directly in a different way. She will be back next week, and I'll look forward to having her here and hearing from her, because then we will have 2 of us walking each other home. And meanwhile, I have to find out how on earth I can bring you into the chat, because I don't see where anybody's getting in. So I would love to have you join in. I'll send out a reminder with the link so you can join us, and you can join us by writing. You can join us by talking. Or you can join us like my beloved cousin, Susan, did for a full year before she passed away. She just joined us by listening. And it was a big deal for her as a person approaching 80 to do this technology, but she did it. She did it. So I do love you. I hope this program was safe for you and also heart-opening for you. I hope that as you come here, you find a place where you can be true to yourself. Participate or just listen. Participate by listening. Whatever feels true to you. And so I'll be back every Monday so we can, trauma survivors, be walking each other home. And if you're not a trauma survivor, chances are great that you know people that are, or you're working with people that are. In early childhood, it is the majority of us that were traumatized as children, and we want the world to be better for children. So I feel like I owe it to myself to become my true self and not keep myself in hiding and not be ashamed and not be embarrassed of those parts of myself that are still healing. Let me welcome them, honor them, love on them, and get help healing them. And that is for today, our session, emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping. Look it up if you're interested. Check out the resources where you are. Write me about it. I can tell you about my years of experience with it. 25 years, yeah, more. So thank you so much. Let me stop the recording and let me see you, I hope, next week. Fairly well.